Hi, everyone. This is on, right? You can. Okay, it gets so loud so fast. I love having these conversations, and I also feel like I need a moment. I need a moment. I'm so excited to welcome you all here for this panel and to have the conversation that we're about to have. So I will introduce my panelists. My name is Amreen Bhatti. I'm the director of the Athena Center for Leadership here at Barnard. So I have next to me, thank you for that. That's the kind of audience you want, right? So I have next to me Erica Tremblay, our filmmaker. Erica, congratulations. Jennifer, I have Rizal Benali next to you. And Jennifer Lauren from Cherokee Film. Welcome. So we have a good amount of time for this conversation. So I have a lot of questions, but I also do want to save a little time for audience questions. So if you feel like you have some, get them ready. I'll get to you in a little bit. But before we get into the big topic of the panel, Erica, I want to know the journey from Sundance to today. What has happened?
Well, it's been a long year. We made the film. We wrapped in 2022 in September, and then we were so lucky to get to premiere the film at Sundance. It was awesome to premiere. Rizal will talk about herself, but we both had projects. We've been coming up kind of together at Sundance at the same time, and it really means a lot when you have a project premiere there. We got the good reviews. Lily Gladstone's Stardom was taking off with her other film. We thought we were selling out audiences, all the things, and then we didn't get any distribution bites. And I was like, oh God, what?
Wait, were you surprised?
Yeah, you're kind of given a checklist, right? When you make a film, and it's like, okay, write a script that people respond to, get financing, make the film with partners like Cherokee Nation Film Office, do these things, then edit your film, get accepted into a top-tier film festival, and at that film festival, your project will be bought. That's kind of what you're taught. But with the ever-changing landscape of Hollywood right now, there's just the consumption, just with streaming, everything's kind of evening out now, and they're just not buying as many films. And last year was a very fraught year for our industry. There were the strikes. There was this realigning and readjusting of what was happening, with this kind of change over to streaming. Yeah, and the film just didn't get picked up. And so we just decided that we would keep the film in front of audiences. We ended up screening at over 50 festivals. We kept winning prizes everywhere we went. We kept selling out the audiences,
So you kept doing the checklist.
We kept doing the checklist. We had, all of these incredible allies in, journalists that kept tweeting about us and writing about us. How is it possible that this film hasn't been purchased? Because it's, for us, an independent film, you're not going to make money. You're not going to get a big check at the end of it. You do it for the sake of doing it. But if you don't have a distributor, you don't have access to the audience. And so it was around October when my co-writer, another Indigenous woman, we just said, let's hire a publicist and let's just talk to anyone who will listen to us for Native American Heritage Month. And so we kind of wrote this scathing op-ed in the Hollywood Reporter, shaming everyone. And then
it was intense. It wasn't scathing.
Okay, scathing is the wrong word.
No, but it was good. It
felt like that's what I felt like I was scathing. And then Lily, who was deep in her Oscar campaign. She's a dear friend and also just an incredible collaborator, and she started accepting awards for Killers of the Flower Moon, but then only talking about Fancy Dance. And pretty soon, all the people who had kind of said no started calling again, and then Apple, I think, recognized that with their work in Indian country and with their work with Killers of the Flower Moon and the Osage and everything that they had learned this past year and their relationship with Lily, that they were the place that made the most sense. So it was, almost a full year. And it was such a relief when it happened, because it almost felt like it wasn't even about our movie anymore, but it was about the case that needed to be made that financing Indigenous stories and uplifting Indigenous stories is a worthy Hollywood cause, and that you can sell those films, and that audiences do want to watch these stories. And I think it's I'm always happy to be in concert or talk about Lily's other film, because this film is so much smaller, but it's also a larger scope in terms of the Indigenous issues and centering the Indigenous folks in the story. And so I'm really relieved and so happy that the film landed where it landed. And I think that it was just a very long year of anxiety and being like, do I even know am I in the right field? Is it you start to want to give up, but we just never did. And we're so grateful for Lily's advocacy. And then also, just being able to tell our own story. And in a year where Hollywood was spending over $500 million on Killers of the Flower Moon, we were this film, it's just not okay for this film not to get 1/4 of a percentage point of that, to showcase actual Indigenous creators making their own story. So it's a happy ending, but I'm exhausted. And I'm glad to not be on that fight anymore. So,
what do you think the tipping point was? Lily's advocacy, the op-ed first?
I think those two things in conjunction with each other, and also just continuing to make the case that you can't mine communities for the stories that you want to tell through a particular lens and then ignore the others. And we just made that very clear everywhere we went. And I also think Apple has been so incredible, and I think they didn't recognize. One of the other things is oftentimes distributors will consider if they're the right partner, can they, and most of the time, independent filmmakers want to have theatrical runs. And Apple's just not in they do that, but it was when I got on the phone with them and said, yeah, fine, it's great to be in theaters, but small films like this get very limited runs in major cities. And I was like, for me, the audience I want access to is reservations across the country, and I want it to be on a platform. And I want it to be, I want it to be seen by, some person in Iowa that's never considered these issues before, and they see it after they're watching some show on Apple, and they're like, oh, isn't that woman that won an Oscar? And then they'll watch it. Whereas the Limley in Hollywood, they're kind of already on my side in a way. And so I think that was also a really great conversation for us to have, and Apple was like, you're right, we're the perfect partner. And so hopefully now the film will be accessible by those people.
I love that. Thank you. I want to know who carried you through all this. This is an emotional journey. So tell me about the community that holds you up. Where do you draw support from?
Yeah, just the folks on the stage, and Roselle was my first mentor at the Indigenous Lab at Sundance, and we all support each other's work, and the work that Jen's doing with the Cherokee Nation, the Writers' Room of Res Dogs, which is a show I work on, and just all of us are out here kind of up against similar systems and up against similar things, that we commiserate with each other and we recognize how hard what we are doing is. And, it's so much easier to get through anything when you have community. And so, we celebrate each other's successes. We, Roselle's success means that there's, it just doesn't feel like we're fighting over resources. It more feels like we're uplifting each other, and nothing is more clear than watching Lily on her Oscar run where she just would rather talk about anyone else but herself. And that just, I think, is it's a beautiful community to be a part of, and on those like horrible days that you're just like crying in fetal position, you just like call your mom or your auntie or a faith keeper, and like having that community to go back to where, you know, when we screened the film this summer there's only around 21 first language speakers of Cayuga left. It's, you know, young people in a modern day don't speak the language fluently like is represented in the film. That's aspirational. And I remember sitting there, I was telling them outside, one of the elders like squeezed my cheeks, and she said, "Neon Ray," which means like, you did good. And so anytime after that, it makes me get emotional, where you're just like, fuck, I don't think I can like keep writing another email or keep doing this. I just remember, "Ooh, you did good." And like, okay, I can write this email now because I have that, like, because nothing's more inspirational than an elder telling you that you did a good job.
Yeah, that's so true.
I'd like to add something.
Oh yeah, please do.
And I think that's like first of all, hello, Rizal here. I think that's, you know, not to sound cheesy, but I think a lot of us, as simple as it may sound, those little moments is kind of what drives us and like motivates us at the end of the day, because aside from the spotlights and aside from, you know, magazine articles and whatnot, I think it really boils down to community and support. And I think what a lot of like big Hollywood doesn't know is that we're a pretty tight-knit community, like Native filmmakers, especially like the women Native filmmakers. And I truly value like Erica's opinion, Jen's opinion, and, you know, go down the list, Tasba, Jana, Sierra, you know, Danis, and we all got each other's backs. And I think it's really important that, you know, not only do we support each other, but through the good times, but also like through the bad times as well. And it's just those little moments, whether it's a grandma or elder, you know, that can really mean the most for a lot of us. Because, you know, that is deep down, our ancestors fought for us, and it's that resilience. And, you know, we're all capable, competent storytellers. And, you know, why are we having non-native above the lines, you know, directors, execs, like, you know, we can write, we can direct, you know. And I think Fancy Dance is a solid testament to that, with Michiana Elise, and Erica wrote a beautiful screenplay, then Erica got to direct it. I think that's a huge accomplishment. And we have people like Lily, you know, we've all been working together for a while, so yeah.
And I would agree that, you know, the work that Erica and Roselle and Lily and everyone that is, you know, in the headlines right now, the work that's being done is really, it's doing so much more for other Native filmmakers than you can even imagine on the business end, because, you know, people are seeing that there is an audience, that people do want to see these stories. They are beautiful stories. It's being proven. And so they're laying the groundwork, you know, for so many other people coming up behind them. So I love being their hype people. Cherokee Phil, we're always trying to lift everyone up on our social media channels and any way we can, so that we can continue bringing more people up, you know, behind them and continue celebrating.
So what I really want to know, I know you can't answer because it's against the ethics, but what I want to know is what the conversation in the group chat is. Like your group chat, because if you're all so close, there's got to be some group chat happening. But I'm not going to ask that because I know what happens if the group chat stays there. And I'm going to ask instead, if you were to write an op-ed now for all three of you, what would it be? Scathing or not? It wasn't supposed to stump you, I promise.
I think I would put a lot. I'm the kind of person that it's a difficult question for me to answer because I tend to put my energy towards other things. You know, I guess for me, like, yeah, I guess it's just a really difficult question. I think an op-ed I would consider would just be something along the lines of what Lily did recently. Instead of maybe an opinion piece, I would just do an article highlighting other indigenous filmmakers and designers and all of the amazing creativity that's out there in Native America. We were just out in the lobby talking about the intersection of fashion, of jewelry, adorning oneself, and how it works with this influx of indigenous people in front of the camera. So you got Lily Gladstone, you know, wearing, you know, indigenous designers, and they've never had that chance before. Jewelry designers, so on and so forth, and I think that's really like a beautiful thing. So I would actually lean more towards an opinion piece and more towards, you know, again, doing what Lily did and highlighting awesome people.
I would say, so at Cherokee Film is a unique organization. For those of you who don't know, which is probably all of you, Cherokee Film we have Cherokee Film Productions, where we create our own productions, TV shows, docuseries, things like that, that tell the Cherokee-specific stories. We also have Cherokee Film Studios, which is our own sound stages in the Cherokee Nation on a reservation. And then we have the Cherokee Film Institute, which is new. We're going to be launching that this fall, where we're going to be bringing more Native American folks into the film industry so that we can increase that representation in front of the camera, behind the camera, you know, in the writers' rooms, in the boardrooms, the lawyers, the accountants. We need so many people. And then the fourth part of our Cherokee Film ecosystem is the Cherokee Film Commission, which a film commission has a lot of jobs. We recruit film into the Cherokee Nation Reservation to create jobs for our people and economic impact, but also to tell Native stories. And so a lot of the requests that we get at the Cherokee Film Commission are insane. In fact, our staff constantly laughs, and like Hannah Rourke, who works for Cherokee Film, is a screenwriter. She writes comedy, and like they get so much inspiration from some of the requests that we get for their comedy at our film commission. But it's often said in our office, like, someday I'm going to write an op-ed about that. And so I'm a journalist. I'm a trained journalist that got into documentary, that got me into film. And so if I was to write an op-ed right now, I think it would probably be about, you know, Erica mentioned earlier the fact that Hollywood sort of mines our communities for the stories. And so I think if I was to write an op-ed, I would fill it full of details of the insane conversations I've had surrounding others wanting to come in and tell our stories for us. And how, you know, we've proven and we continue to prove that we're completely capable of telling stories at every level, all the way up to the highest levels. And there's just the one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, but I think they're starting to because of films like Erica's and like Roselle's, is that there's so much that is added to the story, and so much that is added when you're really telling it from the perspective of the people who it should be being told from. And I think people are really starting to recognize that because of the projects that we're getting to see on the screen today. So,
yeah, that's a great point. Like, even if I were to write something for someone who wasn't Native, I don't think it would still be authentic, to be honest, because there's just so much nuance and specificity that goes into a story that I become really protective of, not only things that I write, but also what I choose to direct now. And I think that's a really important part of my process because, you know, there's a lot of things that you encounter, and especially as like a Native woman, you know, it can be difficult out there. That's why we got each other.
Yeah, I think if I was going to focus attention, it was like even when we were having conversations about this panel and like the term representation and how I feel like us as natives is just constantly asked this question about representation. And it's a question that I think is worthy of discussion, but I think oftentimes that grounds the discussion in like this kind of like idea that Hollywood's gonna discover us, which is just like a weird thing for us to like be celebrating that we're discovered. And I think for me, what I'm always the most joyous to talk about and what's always the most interesting for me to talk about is the actual craft. It's how we ground our work in community. It's how we, you know, so many elders, so many faith keepers like read the script, you know, just making sure we get those ceremony parts right, that we're being responsible, that we're bringing in the community as collaborators. And it's, you know, film is such a hierarchical structure where it's like above the line, below the line. I mean, that's so aggressive and kind of like nasty, and it's like application of human beings being above and below things. It's just really wild to try to walk into that construct and like tell films through like an indigenous lens and through an indigenous like cultural perspective. And so for me, like the most exciting things to always talk about is how, like for this film, for example, we had the set calls translated in Cayuga and gave lanyards out to everyone on the first day, and the language was alive and living as we were making the film. We made sure that language was a part of the process, not just a gimmick of people on the screen speaking it, which has been so much of how our languages have been presented by non-native filmmakers for 100 years. And so I think for me that would be the most exciting thing to get to do in the press, is just talk about the beauty of our process and how we ground ourselves in a different kind of value system than what's expected from Hollywood. And that's why it's so great to get to work with, you know, organizations like Cherokee Nation Film Office, who helped fund this film because they understood what we were trying to do. And like, maybe it's gonna cost a little extra money to take a half a day on the first day to have like faith keepers come in and do prayer protection prayers, or to celebrate music, to start everyone off in a good mind and with a good space. And so those things are worth investing in. And hopefully, you know, there'll be more opportunities to talk about those sorts of things now that I've written the scathing opinion, which I don't take back or regret.
You never should. I'm so happy that you said that, because in our pre-conversations, or you know, the pre-emails, like that really speaks to my heart. You know, that the representation conversation is always. I almost can tell the kind of room I'm in by knowing how far the representation conversation will go. Like, does it just stop there? We're good. We got some representation, but representation gets us. I mean, I won't name names, but. I mean, it matters, and it's not everything. And so getting to that deeper level of conversation, to me, actually marks whether I'm speaking to a predominantly white audience or not, basically. Like, who is this for? And so I love the examples that you gave of how you ground your practice in community and in your values, and I would love more examples. Will you share any more? Is anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think, you know, those are examples, and, you know, those aren't necessarily new things. You know, those are things that were being done on Reservation Dogs, which is a show I worked on, and thanks. That's the group chat that nobody wants to go public. No one wants to see that one. That someone will write an op-ed about that in 50 years, and hopefully we'll all be gone. Yeah, I think it starts even beforehand, where we're sharing scripts with each other, and we're reaching out to other filmmakers, and we're getting feedback and talkbacks in that way. I will just say, which I know this isn't answering your question, but it's really exhausting to operate inside of this system. I was asked by a journalist 2 days ago, what do you do to like create, safety for yourself? And I'm like, I'm fucking exhausted. I am so tired. I am, trying to do my best to like work through the kind of ups and downs of this with the therapist and with like family and with like faith keepers. But it's very unnatural to go into this system and this like weird hierarchical world and like still keep like a grounding. It's like, the dissonance of like what's happening in the Middle East right now with like just feeling like, what am I doing sitting on this stage? And like, how can I ethically be in any it's just so exhausting. And I feel like it's important to talk about that because like there's so much responsibility to get it right, to make sure that your community is okay, to make sure that you're upholding the values that your elders have taught you. It's so exhausting to go on a set and be like, okay, I don't want to just be the director and be all the way up here and like lording over people. But in order to have a truly collaborative process, you need money, you need resources, you need more time. And that's not given to even the most famous filmmakers, and certainly not to Indigenous women telling Indigenous queer stories. And so every day you're going on set and you're worried about everyone and how they're doing because that's what you are called to do by your community. But how do you do that and all of the jobs that you're meant to do as the filmmaker? And so it's a very tiring, exhausting process to deconstruct something that is so corrupt. And we keep showing up every day because our stories are important and they matter. And also, it's just like fun to make things that you're proud of. And so, I feel like that doesn't answer your question at all, but it is an example of how I'm trying to be mindful and present in the work, and also just be realistic about how much can you actually do in a system that's set so against the values that you hold.
It was a better answer than probably the question I asked, because I actually, again, you speak to my heart, which is that I feel such a deep dissonance every minute of every day for the last 4 or 5 months, right? I mean, before that as well, but it's, we are having a conversation about Indigenous stories, and there's stuff happening around the world that I feel really we don't acknowledge and is hard to acknowledge, and it feels so fraught. You can read the New York Times, you can read about everything that's happening on college campuses. Like, it feels like a very, I feel like many people are telling me to take care of myself, and I'm like, I'm really tired. We all are, because we are fighting inside systems that are really hard.
Who else is tired? Are we all tired? Yeah, okay.
And like soul tired, right? Like, not like I'm sleepy, but like my soul is tired. And so I hear you deeply on all of that, and I thank you for sharing that. What are the kinds of Indigenous stories that you want to see in the future? What's getting you excited? Any of you? Jennifer?
Well, any and all, but one of the things that excites me is, as a documentary filmmaker, I have an appreciation for history, and I think I want to retell Cherokee, specifically, history from our lens, because I think the history of how this nation was founded, and the history of Indigenous people, specifically my tribe, Cherokee Nation, I think people have a gross misunderstanding of the way that history actually unfolded here. And so I want to go back, and I want to help anyone that wants to retell that history from our perspective. I would love to help someone do that. But I also am a huge fan of comedy, and I think we all need more laughter in our lives. And I would love to see more funny Native stories. And one thing that I think everyone up here will tell you is that, Native Americans have been portrayed as, stoic and all of this, but when you're in community, and specifically in Cherokee Nation, when I get to go hang out with traditional Cherokees, elders, specifically people who speak our language, it's just we sit around and chuckle and laugh and make jokes, and we're actually really funny. And so a lot of that comedy, it's a specific type of comedy, at least in the Cherokee Nation. I'm sure it's different in other tribes, but I would love to bring more of that lightness to the stories that we're telling. Yeah.
Same. I think, yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I feel like I can be such a dark person, but my personality can sort of be opposite at times. Erica knows this.
Roselle is very funny.
Thank you. But I think I tend to do things that are a little more dark naturally. I don't know if any of you have seen Murder in Bighorn, but thank you. But that's a pretty heavy topic matter, and I think sometimes, like, I agree, we definitely need more indigenous comedy, but there's still things in our communities that aren't perfect and need to change. So, I'm all about uplifting all stories, but it's a balance, we gotta have funny stories, we gotta have hero stories, we have to have tragedies, and I personally connected to tragedies more as a kid, but I also love docs, and maybe that's why my breakout show was what it was about. So I think at the end of the day, what gets me excited is I know there's a lot of talent in Native America. I know this. I see it happening. It feels like we're in the thick of it. And I'm excited to have Native writers, Native directors, Native producers, Native executives actually being trusted to do our own stories, and to stop being fetishized and romanticized, at the end of the day, like, we're pretty competent. It's like, why isn't anybody hiring us at a higher rate, So not only do I think I've heard you say this a lot, Erica, just give us the money. But it's true, like, give us the money, hire us, like, you don't have to have a non-native person there that, that's considered more trustworthy. I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think Roselle said something last year at Sundance for this Adobe thing that went viral. What was it exactly that you said? Was it Stoic Indian?
Yeah, it's something about us Stoic Indians and laughter is medicine, and with all the healing, or with all the tragedy in our communities, it's laughter is medicine, and we're tired of the Stoic Indian being portrayed on screen, but because we're not all stoic. Look at Erica laughing right now. And Jen smiling, you know what I mean? So, we're complex people, as is everybody else,
Yeah, that really took Indian country, everyone was sharing it. It was so impactful, because I think the representation of Native Americans in cinema and television have either been the savage warrior that's gonna come and mess up your pioneer, whatever that wagon thing is, burn it, or the Stoic Indian, which is the peaceful, stoic, loving the earth character, and
tear coming down,
yeah,
garbage
one single
being
tear
thrown on the road.
I'm really interested in seeing what indigenous filmmakers do with genre. I want to see horror. I want to see anti-heroes. I want to see complicated characters that aren't always making the right decision. I want to see like evil Indians out there like doing stuff. Like I want to see the good ones. I feel like we've been expected to be. We were portrayed a certain way, and then as Indigenous filmmakers, we're kind of expected to only write certain stories that fit within those paradigms. And I'm really interested in seeing, we get asked questions all the time about this film. Well, aren't you afraid that you're going to make your community look bad because they're stealing? And I'm like, have you seen Saltburn? I mean, that guy's like white people get to do any sort of debauchery in films, and like it's just entertainment, and like they're stealing to feed themselves, and I'm going to make my community look bad. And so I want to go even further into that and like explore really complicated Native characters, whether it's in genre, whether it's not. I want to see comedies, rom-com. Like I want to see an awesome Native rom-com.
Yes.
And just break out of, this is a great example of like someone just like putting a really personal story out on the table. But like I want to play around and do things that are outside of what I think has been expected or the scripts that are sent to me. So yeah, I want to see more genre, horror, all this.
Thank you. So I think we probably have time for 2 questions, and we actually have a group of teenagers here who are part of our Athena Film Festival Teen Immersive. They are aspiring filmmakers, film nerds, high school students from all across the country. So I just want to open up the option for our teens first, if anyone has a question. And if not, then I will go to folks outside of the Teen Immersive. You still have a second. Yes, no, okay. All right, so there's a question here.
All right, so the acronym SWAN, S-W-A-N, stands for Support Women Artists Now, and the 5 of us here are from a group called International Swans. So my question to you is, what is December 28th? In your life, what is December 28th?
My birthday?
Yes. I want to tell you that on December 28th, you were named Swan of the Day. Our first profile of you was published on August the 31st of 2022, and the first time that we mentioned Lily was in October 2016 when we wrote in glowing terms about certain women. So we just want you to know you can wear one of these.
Oh, thank you, Nyawa.
We love the film, and we want to know that we're here and we're cheering for you.
Oh, thank you. That
Thank
means
you.
a lot. Really love that. I'm more of an ugly duckling, but
You're a swan of the day.
You're a swan, baby.
Any last questions? Anyone? Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. It's amazing. I've been following sort of the journey of this film from Reddit, where you very kindly shared your application to Sundance, and that was very sweet. And I'm just wondering what was the seed? Like, what inspired you to write this? Was it inspired by true events? Like, if you can take us through that, would be great.
yeah, so actually I had written a short film with my partner at the time, Kasia Shimolinski, and produced a short film called Little Chief with them that Lily starred in, and it was set on my res in Oklahoma, and it premiered at Sundance in 2020, and so I knew that the seed of what Kasia and I had written for that had been, people were interested in it. And so I didn't want to expand that story because I kind of felt like the story that had meant to be told in that short film had been told. But I said to Lily, if I write a feature that has a character that's similar to this with a relationship with the young child, like, would you be interested? And they said yes. And so I was doing a 3-year-long language immersion program in Six Nations, Ontario, learning Cayuga. We were like swapping in the night. Like Roselle came to New Jersey as I was like going up to Six Nations, and just the community of working with filmmakers like Roselle and we were just all grinding away and like thinking writing and doing things. And while I was there, I learned the familial words for mother and aunt. And I was like, what's so great about learning Cayuga is that it was opening up a worldview that has kind of been beautifully encapsulated in the language. Like, if you don't know the gender of a person, it's a she. If it's a group of mixed gender people, they're all hers. And like just the opposite of how English handles the patriarchy. And so I was just so moved by that. And I was like, how can I write a film that encapsulates the beauty of matrilineal ties and the queer folks that keep our communities safe? And so that was kind of the inspiration and the mandate, and I thought I would ground it in an auntie-niece story, which is a mother-daughter story. And by definition of the Cayuga language, it's a mother-daughter story. And so that was the inspiration, and just continuing to be pushed and by my peers, and hopefully we'll just keep getting to do it, make more.
Thank you so much. So Jennifer, Roselle, and Erica, thank you for taking your time, and thank you for this beautiful film.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.